All right, all right, all right. You're listening to the We're Talking Football podcast. I'm Weston. With me, as always, the right-hand man, Lou. I should call you the continuously sick Lou. Lou's been toughing it out for the last few weeks here.
The continuously sick old dirty bastard. I don't know if you saw what I just did, but I did the little Dumb and Dumber. You know when he goes to spray his mouth and he sprays it to the side? That's what I just did right there.
He does that with the Banaka, right? Like
and I'm doing this with the albuterol,
yeah. So the air around Lou is cleaner.
Yeah.
He's doing the environment a favor, and we appreciate it. So, Lou, here we are. We have about a week and a half till the Super Bowl. So we'll recap the conference championship. We had the 49ers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. We had the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll jump into those games. Got a quick couple of topics that we can run through to wrap us up. I know we've been making this promise week over week over week over week as of late, but this will be a shorter aired show this evening, and then next week we'll come back. We'll wrap it up. Obviously, this weekend we have like the Shrine Bowl, the East-West. We have the Senior Bowl. For those that care, it's the Pro Bowl. We will not talk about the Pro Bowl on the We're Talking Football podcast, although I did get text messages telling me that Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle are really good at dodgeball. So apparently there's a dodgeball game happening this evening, I guess, as part of the weekend festivities. And then we'll also kind of do our quick preview of the Super Bowl, which, surprise, surprise, is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Sound about right?
So, you know what? I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. Glad to hear. Hear. So let's just dive right in. Let's just roll up the sleeves. We'll go in order of the games. So obviously the early game on the 3 o'clock window from where we sit on Sunday was my San Francisco 49ers traveling to Philadelphia against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm just like, you can ask me questions along the way. I'm just going to give you my knee-jerk reaction walking out of that game. Dude, I honestly still wake up every single morning and say to my wife, I'm like, what time do we play today? I don't feel like I watched an NFC championship game or a championship game of any caliber. And that's not meant to like knock the competition on the field, but or either team, but it is meant to knock the competition on the field. I think as a knowledgeable fan that I consider myself, and understanding, what we were faced with even walking in, talking about a Mr. Irrelevant rookie quarterback, 7 straight starts with wins. This will be his tallest challenge, of course, and arguably the most important game of his professional career at this point in time. So I knew all of that. So it was obvious to me very early, and by very early, I mean 6 offensive snaps into the game for the 49ers, that this game was more than likely over. What I did not expect was still a close game even going into the half. I mean, dude, there was less than 2 minutes left. It was still 14-7, a game that was within reach. And then you have Josh Johnson, who botches a snap right before the half, turn that into 7 quick points. Very early on in the second half, you have your 4th string quarterback who's only been with the team for about 7 weeks at this point in time. It's his 3rd stint with the Kyle Shanahan-led San Francisco 49ers. But that being said, his most recent stint was just, again, plus or minus a few, more than a handful in terms of weeks with the team. Then he gets concussed. And then now we're technically on our 5th string quarterback, because you bring back in your 3rd string quarterback who has a torn UCL and literally can't throw the football. So for the entire second half of a football game, there was no threat of the San Francisco 49ers actually throwing the football outside of one pass you saw from Christian McCaffrey in a wildcat formation. And when I say no threat, it's not because they were locking down the wide receivers and taking away the passing game. There was physically not an able body on the field who could throw the ball. And then the game got out of hand, and it got out of hand, in my opinion. So first thing I want to say, like when I'm commending the 49ers, like, listen, they did everything they could. They played with heart. I think the coaches tried everything that they possibly could. It's just the chips were stacked a little too high. I thought, specifically in the first half, the defense balled out, right? This high-power Eagle offense where we couldn't move the ball.
I don't think it was just the first half, though. I thought your defense played really good.
Whole game. I think the whole game, 31-7 tells you a different story.
You can't just box score here, observe here, because if you realize, I think the Eagles held the ball for 15 more minutes because they were able to, because you guys cannot sustain drives because you didn't have a legit quarterback back there. You guys, they also ran like 28 more plays than you guys. So just after a while, the defense, doesn't matter how long and how good, your defense is going to be. After a while, when you're constantly on the field and you're not getting a break, they're gonna bend and they're gonna break after a while.
Yeah. Not only that, I think it was very evident as early as the first half, definitely in the second half, that the defense was going to have to try to win the football game if they were going to win the football game. So I also think you see you're less risk averse, meaning that like you're going to take some chances, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're going to send some blitzes that maybe you wouldn't call. I think a highlight of this was on the roughing the kicker penalty when they were trying to block the punt. Now we can argue whether that was a penalty or not. If he was held, blocked into it, all good. I literally looked at my wife before that ball was snapped, and I was like, they got to go block. They got to try to block it. And whatever happens. Like there's no other way that they swing this tide or shift momentum, because it's not going to be done on the offensive side of the ball. The defense and the special teams are going to have to try something crazy and pull the rabbit out of the hat. Otherwise, this game's going to end exactly the way it did. That being said, like, hey, kudos to the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, we know plenty of Eagle fans. I know plenty of Eagle fans, and I had to endure.
They're the classiest, nicest people you can meet on this.
Oh my god, dude!
Honestly, green earth.
Honestly, and this is probably going to be offensive, and I really don't even care. I feel like they're the most ignorant fan base. Like the conversations I was having with like lifelong diehard Eagle fans, it was just I was like, were you watching the same football game that I was? Because I wasn't inspired by your team's play. Like they did what they were supposed to do. I will commend that. I will give them their kudos, right? Like they smelled blood in the water and they went and took it. But dude, for a long time, that game was still hanging in the balance given everything that we saw. I mean, dude, in this game, you saw Nick Bosa, right? Probably the defensive player of the year, get injured while he's not even on the field, right? Like that's literally how this game went. It was just absurd. And that's why I still sit here and feel like I'm in shock that I didn't actually watch it. Yeah. You know what's funny though, is I think that actually softens the blow for me a little bit, because I can walk away with I honestly feel like, and I said this to friends and family, that had they played at full strength and lost that game, I might be more bitter. Like I'm not bitter. I'm just defeated, if that makes sense, right? Like disappointed. And
disappointed Weston,
in the way the game went.
Well, listen, you're talking to a Chargers fan. Anyone that understands about being disappointed after watching a team they root for, it's definitely me. And I agree with you. I feel like I have the same exact sentiment that we got robbed of an NFC Championship game. I picked the Eagles to win, right? Yep. But I thought it was going to be a fairly competitive game. I love the matchup, especially in the trenches, right? That's what I was that was like my thing to watch during the game. That being all said, as if I was a Niners fan, as soon as that happened, it's like the realization, like the likelihood of us winning this game is slim to none because of what happened with Purdy. And if you didn't believe it then, you definitely believed it right after Johnson got hurt, right? So it's like you went through the many stages of grief within like a quarter and a half.
Yeah.
And it's like you're already preparing for the worst. I'm not. It's all the chicken or egg type of thing. Like, what's worse, knowing that you absolutely had no chance and you come to terms with it, or at the last second it being ripped out of your heart from a competitive standpoint?
Yeah.
Don't know. I think it's all depending on the individual. But I will say this: I'm torn and conflicted how I feel about the Eagles after this game. Let's look at their magical run in these playoffs. Right, they beat the Daniel Jones led Giants, and then they beat you guys like
a team that couldn't throw the football.
Exactly. So on one hand, I wasn't impressed with Jalen Hurts and the aerial attack of the Eagles, right? Because I thought he looked out of sync. I think you guys only gave up like less than 130 passing yards, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
For that for a team that can run the ball and then bring up the second line of defense and can pass it behind them, what have you. Like, there was no sync whatsoever from a passing standpoint. So you could throw shade at the Eagles offense, but like, Hurts played like garbage, in my opinion. On the other side, depends if you're an optimist or a pessimist. You could bring to the attention the Eagles found they don't have to just rely on the aerial attack to win. It was impressive how they found another way to win, and they were pretty dominant with their rushing attack. Right, they isolated Kinlaw all game. He got washed out every game. It was pretty embarrassing. It looked like he didn't even belong on the field because how much he got pushed over to the sidelines numerous times. So it was impressive that you guys out physical you guys, something I feel like hasn't been done this year, right? So maybe the Eagles are impressive because they can win a multitude of ways. They don't just have to air it out. They can slow it down and run it down your throat and play good defense and just like kind of like matriculate down the field and like give it time, like and just work its process and just wear you down and nub you down. Kind of like what you guys did to the Chargers. When you guys play when the Niners played the Chargers, and that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
We lost all of our interior defensive linemen in the second half. You literally just shoved it down our throats because we couldn't do anything from a personnel standpoint.
Yeah.
I know that was very long-winded.
No, it's not even long-winded. I'm just trying to think how to come back from that. But more important, like, so you and I both were not like stat watchers, right? In the sense of like, we don't just look at the stat line. If I was to tell you that Jalen Hurts only threw for 121 yards and 0 touchdowns, and that that's a win. And the leading rusher for the Philadelphia Eagles had 48 rushing yards, you'd be like, the 49ers won this football game.
Of course.
Right? And I do, like, they went 44 for 148, which is less than 3.5 yards a carry. Like, any defense would take that all day. But to your point, it was the second half just bludgeoning them, right? Like, literally just like physically moving them off the ball.
Yeah, the first half was ugly football from the Eagles. They were opportunistic. I get it. That's how they, but the second half was just like, exactly. You just let it, just keep on doing it, and it will work its process out.
The first half, I would argue their best play wasn't even a play that should have been counted, right? Yeah. Like on a fourth down. And I don't, we're going to talk about this plenty when we go into the next game, right? About officiating, etc. But what I'm just perplexed by, and I honestly don't think, like, I totally understand. I have a couple critiques of coaching in this particular game. One is it's on the grandest stage, right, in a conference championship. Like when you see a wide receiver get up and talking about huddling up and get on the ball, blah, 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 blah. You got to be like, did he really catch that ball? Maybe I want to throw the challenge flag. It's early enough. It's first half. I burn a timeout. How many times do I really need both of my challenges in the game? The law of averages. But I also understand why Kyle doesn't throw the flag, right? Like, you look up on the big screen, every review that we saw on TV, there was definitely not enough to give anybody any confidence that that call would be overturned. And like, do you just first drive of the game? Like, we've been watching football long enough to understand that, like, hey, the first drive of the game, like, Yeah. Okay, so you get points, I get it, but it's not insurmountable, right? Like, and it does set the tone, but throughout that drive, the 49ers had them in 3rd and long, 4th downs, right? That was a 4th down play where it would have been turnover on downs. But where I'm baffled by is we've saw so many times this year where coaches haven't had to waste their challenge because of the expedited review, like in the booth, and they have every single goddamn angle that you can see, and that's all these people are doing in New York. And you come back from a commercial break, like I myself on the reviews that they saw, and obviously it's against my team. I'm like, they'll never overturn it this catch. You just can't see it indisputable. And then you come back and all of a sudden there's like 2 other angles that show you it's incomplete. And like, you've had this angle the entire time. I'm not saying about Fox TV. I'm saying the people in the booth, right? Like, they have those angles. Like, where's that in an important game? So
how about this? It's interesting that I do want to play off of that, because last episode, maybe 2 episodes before, you asked me if I listened to Moving the Chains with Jim Miller and Pat Kerwin.
Yeah.
They were literally talking about that this week. Why not add another, official in the game?
Why not?
In the playoffs, to have an extra set of eyes.
100%, dude. Like, all fans do, all players do, all coaches do is just shit on the officiating all year long, right? Like, the shit on it.
These games are more urgent. There's a higher sense of urgency.
Get it right. What's the cost of getting it right? Like, you improve your product.
Put another official.
Yeah, I have 3 more. I don't care. Have them flood the field. Get your product right on the most important of stages. But I will be critical of Kyle in one element. I want to talk more about this in a second. Like, on a side note, I'm actually going to ask a question to you. But where I'm a little perplexed is in the second half when we went back to Brock Purdy, right? I have to imagine at that point in time, Kyle was well aware from the medical staff that, like, yo, this dude can't throw the football, right? So the only option you have is to hand the ball off. And I understand that whether it's McCaffrey, Juszczyk, Jawan Jennings, all these guys who have played quarterback in their lifetime who know how to throw a ball, I understand that you're not comfortable throwing the ball with them. But in that like 21-7 scenario, don't you want to play 11 on 11 when you have a quarterback who they know, literally can't throw the football, right? Like, he has not been in and all of a sudden he's back in. So the defense is confident he's not going to be able to push the ball down the field. You're playing 10 versus 11. That's just one extra person. Like, so what if, like, McCaffrey's not a quarterback and you're probably not going to call a pass play, but what if you do, right? Like, they have to account for the if scenario.
So you wanted them to
100%. I wanted
the Miami Dolphins, like, was like 2008, like Wildcat.
Yeah, I wanted the Wildcat, man. Like, dude, throw back to when we were in high school. But everybody was running the fucking wing tee and wishbone offense. Like,
but how? You gotta think about it. First of
how's
all,
it any different than what they were doing? It's not. There's just the threat of being.
But they practice. They didn't practice any. If they did practice any Wildcat formations, how many formations or plays do you think they really?
It's true. They're not prepared,
and you're not going. They're not prepared for it, and they're going against a defense that's pretty damn good. So how really sustainable would that have been for a whole half? I think hindsight's 2020. Maybe they were trying to give to the illusion that
he Purdy might be able to throw the ball when we need to.
Kind of like what happened with Phillip Rivers, and I hate that I keep on bringing up the Chargers thing, but when Phillip Rivers messed up his knee in Indianapolis, came out against the Patriots. No one knew he had a torn ACL.
Yeah.
So maybe they they just shot him up in the halftime, like, because maybe they were trying to give that illusion. I don't know.
I don't know either. I just know that the outcome wouldn't have been any worse, right? Like, I mean, the outcome. I don't know if
it'll be any better though. So.
No, I don't, right? But I feel like that's more of a.
It was insurmountable. The odds were against you.
Yeah, it was, man.
It was. I don't think there's no amount of coaching you could have done or personnel that really could have overcame you guys playing a good Philadelphia Eagles team. So
I agree. I mean, listen, Philly's a really good team, right? Like, if anything, I'll sit here and actually give them their flowers in the sense of, like, hey, they caused the injury, right? By getting to the passer, both of them, right? And that's what they do. And I'm no dummy. I was seeing what their defensive line was doing to the offensive line. I do know on that Purdy injury, though, man, Ayuk was open and he was about to dial that up, and that was about to, But I think what makes me feel better is I can sit here and all these what ifs, right, where I don't actually feel like we lost the game. Like I literally don't as a fan. I know we did.
Yeah, it wasn't because like anything stupid happened, or it's just
outside
luck.
your control. What can you do?
It just was not your day. Luck, and
So you follow 49ers Twitter, obviously, because of me and because of what we do here.
Unfortunately,
yeah. So you see how toxic this place is.
So yeah.
What's your thought? And I know we've had this conversation before. I don't want to get into the quarterback scenario. We can save that content for another day. I want to see a little bit more about how this Purdy thing, because there's just conflicting reports out there of like timeline.
This is great, by the way. I feel like today's Groundhog's Day, right? So yeah. I feel like when we're talking about 49ers football, well, it's the same shit. It's Groundhog's Day again, just like Bill Murray in that movie. And you're literally every offseason, we're talking about who's going to line up under center.
Good news is it's not going to be Tom Brady. Good news, bad news, right?
It's not going to be Aaron Rodgers either.
Yeah. I don't.
Did you hear what he said too?
Yeah, but he was golfing, bro. Actually, you want to know it? What
they won't trade him to.
No, the difference is like Brady was doable if he was still around because he's a free agent, right? You don't have to give anything up. You just got to pay the man.
Well, he had one more year on the deal.
No, I thought he was a free agent.
Stop, boy. Can you look that up? I'm pretty sure they have one more year on the deal.
I'll be right back with that. All right, thanks, Stat Boy. With Rodgers.
By the way, how old is our Stat Boy? He sounds really young.
He's young.
Okay, he's an intern.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He gets college credit for doing this. No cash. With Rodgers, you got to give something up to get him.
Yeah.
And then are the Packers that freaking stupid? Like they've already said they don't even want to trade him in conference, let alone to somebody that they know they'd run into regularly. But you've seen a lot of people poo-pooing Kyle, right? Like, oh, he's not but like again, we're right back to the time to move on from him. Like, how's he different than Harbaugh? Yada yada yada. And I'm just
didn't get to four
three
conference champions in 4 years.
In 4 years, and the year that we didn't go, we just barely didn't make the playoffs, and we had 40 plus people on IR at some point throughout the year. Including your starting quarterback, including your starting left tackle, including your stud wide receiver, losing a running back to a torn ACL.
These are the same people. These people are saying some ignorant shit because these are the same people that probably would have been calling for Marv Levy after his second failed Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and Marv Levy was an innovative coach with the Buffalo Bills. I know he never got over the hump to win the Super Bowl, but damn, he got them there. Often. So, and he's a Hall of Fame coach. So you would rather that than be irrelevant every year.
100%. This is my argument time and time again, man. Very few people win the Super Bowl. In fact, only one team out of 32 do every single year. And for the longest time, it was just the Patriots, right? Like that's who everybody was trying to beat. Like I think back again, we're secretly Detroit Lion fans on this podcast, and one of my diehard football fan buddies is a lifelong Detroit Lions fan. And I was talking to him about it offline. And he was just like, dude, I'd kill to have a coach that got us to 3 out of 4 NFC championship games. He's like, you're watching relevant football into January. He's like, outside of the season, he's like, I haven't watched relevant football past October 30th.
Weston, let me tell you something. Why am I so good with my mock drafts that for NFL drafts every year?
Because I start to prepare.
Because I start preparing in November, man. I start preparing in November.
I know. Now you're late.
Because that's usually when the season ends for. Yep. So people are just being greedy little brats. That's all I can say.
Lou, I do want to add this before we go to the Bengals Chiefs game.
We do have to go to that game because some fantastic analysis from previews from us. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this out loud in case my wife listens back to this. We were saving this. I had mentioned, I think 2 episodes ago, that I was saving a public apology. What I'm saying is that this week, dude, my wife has been so much more disappointed over this loss than I have. And part of it is because she's been on this Brock Purdy hype wagon since it happened, and it's my fault. it's my fault because when Jimmy went down and Brock was coming in, and even after that Miami game, I was like, I said, I was like, I don't want them bringing in a vet. I don't want them doing any of that. Like, let's see what the rookie has. Like, let's see what you have in your stable. This is a great time to roster assess. Like, you're going to limp into the playoffs just based on record and where you were, but you're not going to do anything. And she's telling me I'm the worst kind of fan. You got no belief in your team and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I have history that supports it, and history still supports it, in that no rookie quarterback has ever taken their team to the Super Bowl, right? And that's just what I was trying to explain to her. And I was like, and I have no reason to believe this 7th round draft pick who's getting slung in, who was, half a second away from being on the practice squad when we signed Nate Sudfeld, even after he was drafted. So there was just all these things. But she was like, dude, for weeks riding on me. And I told her, I was like, all right, Brock Purdy gets to the Super Bowl, win or lose, I'll give you the public apology and I'll eat my, my pie and I'll tell you everything. But I'm saying that because, dude, like all week, dude. But on Monday nonstop, I had to go into New York City for work. She's texting me all day long. Any updates on Brock? Any updates on Brock? Any updates on Brock?
Wow, she's over Trey Lance already too, yeah.
She was never in on Trey Lance. Not that she knew any differently. I caused the Brock hysteria in our house.
Like Kyle Shanahan, your wife wanted Mac Jones. I got it.
100%. She wanted Jones at 3. All right, Philadelphia Eagle fans, good luck. Good for you. We'll see you again next year.
Congratulations going to Super Bowl, but you're still in Philadelphia, so it's a win-loss there.
Yeah, the city of brotherly love, which is really just the city of ugly people. I'm sorry. All right.
Some people think the show Always Sunny in Philadelphia is fiction, but no, it's
no.
I mean, it's nonfiction. It's real.
It's real life in the city of Philadelphia.
That's a documentary for people from Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's what it is. Dumpster babies. And the green man. All right. Bengals Chiefs. You start. I went on a tangent about.
Well, no, I'm actually going to defer to you, and let me tell you why. On our last show, we both predicted how the game was going to end, and I kind of feel like we both. Hold on, hear me out. We both were pretty damn accurate. I said the Bengals were going to lose because Joe Burrow was going to, drive and he was going to stall. All right, if I'm grasping for straws here, which I will, that kind of did happen. And then you said, no, I think the Chiefs are going to win. And how they're going to win is that Harrison Butker will hit a game-winning 47-yard field goal. Now, Weston, we have receipts, by the way.
We do.
Please share with us, how did the Chiefs win?
So the Chiefs won by a 7-play drive stalling, as you said it would, with what, 2 minutes left? No, not even. 48 seconds left, and they punted. And then the Chiefs went down the field and Harrison Butker kicked a 45-yard field goal to win.
I'll allow it.
After, on social media, what was a confrontational called penalty. But listen, that's a penalty. That's a penalty. You just hate to see it in that spot. That's a penalty all day.
That's a penalty 10 times out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Well, watching the game, like I said, given my prediction, I picked the Chiefs to win. I think, as did you. I said the Bengals are the better team, right?
Yep.
But I threw conventional logic out of the window there, and I said the Chiefs were going to win. I said the Chiefs pass rush, right, was going to cause problems. Did I not?
Yes, you did.
I said I was disappointed that the Buffalo Bills never got home against Burrow, but I said this will be completely different. We particularly named 2 people, Chris Jones and Frank Clark, and they caused havoc all game. That's exactly what happened. Yep. The Chiefs were it pains me, man. It pains me to say this because he's in my division. But Mahomes, all gutsy performance.
Oh, dude, for sure.
And listen, I mean, he played better than Joe Burrow on one leg, and it was extremely, it's killing me to say this, but it was commendable. And I told you we were going to hear about this ankle, up until February, whatever, 12th or what have you. The Chiefs were also fantastic, I thought, on fifth down. They were 1 for 1 on fifth down. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that controversial series of plays. I see now you're getting a little delay there, right?
Yep.
Where the Chiefs had like three chances on third down. But I feel like that always is the Chiefs have become the Patriots. Something always, a ball bounces their way, a play goes their way. The referees, determine like a certain type of thing, and it's just annoying and frustrating that they have the luck of the Irish up their ass. And I was so excited because it was 3rd and 16. Joe Burrow hits that out route to Hayden Hurst. I was like, here it comes. This guy is going to pull like a Montana type of, because they were backed up.
Yep.
And it just never materialized because that offensive line could not hold up against that pass rush.
Yeah. You asked me the week prior if I was worried about when Cincinnati versus Buffalo about the offensive line, and I really wasn't, because I think Buffalo's line is not the same without Von Miller and just not as good as advertised, but Kansas City's defensive line is as good as advertised, and thought they would exploit that banged up O-line. And, this game wasn't sexy by any means. Like, you didn't see, in my opinion, a all-star performance from either Burrow or Mahomes, where I give the nod is like a really gutsy performance, right, by Mahomes. And this added to the chatter from my game, right? Like, you got Mahomes out there in a high ankle sprain that could be like 6 weeks, depending about how bad it is, and he's out there, right? And fans are of course going nuts because Purdy's not going back out there, but they see him trying to throw the ball on the sideline. They're like, how bad? Like, is he not sucking it up? And it's just like, dude, some guys are just superhuman, right? And honestly, like, as much as I hate romanticizing what he did on that ankle injury and making the hype train stronger around Patrick Mahomes, like, it's superhuman what he does.
It was
it's
legendary.
Superhuman. Even Travis Kelce, who like literally didn't even know if he was going to play an hour before kickoff, right? Like, out there warming up, doing its thing. I mean, your gut always tells you a guy like Kelce is going to be out on that field, right? Like, we'd be talking about a totally different game, but it wasn't glitz and glam, right? I think it was more of a defensive struggle throughout the game. It looked eerily similar, in my opinion, to how last year started, right? Where, Kansas City looked like they were a little bit more in control early, right? And then Cincinnati had to mount that comeback. And I'm like, here we go, 2.0 version of this in an AFC Championship game. But when all was said and done, I agree with you. I don't think the better team won. I think the better coached team won this game with the biggest superstar the NFL has to offer now.
Best player in the league. Yep.
Yeah, it's Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, he's your league MVP. I heard somebody be like, hey, if Mahomes retired today without even playing in the Super Bowl game, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I don't even think that's inaccurate. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, how do you dispute it, right? This is his 3rd Super Bowl appearance in 5 years as a starting quarterback in the league.
Here's another interesting topic they brought up too today. Where would you rank Patrick Mahomes amongst best quarterbacks of all time?
See, I can't do that yet. I can't.
Is he top 5? He's definitely easy top 10.
If he wins this one, he's top
5. He's top 5.
But without that second, he can't be, dude. Like, he just can't be. So here's how I feel about this, right? We're about to go on a tangent right now, like we always do in the We're Talking Football podcast. But I know everybody says Tom Brady is the GOAT. And I get it. He's got the largest body of work, right? He's played longer than anybody. He owns every major passing record that you can imagine, right? Like, that all says you're the GOAT, right? Like, how do you knock somebody who's been playing at such a high level for 20 plus years? I say this about Jerry Rice all the time. They're like, oh, he played longer, And I'm like, yeah, but that's part of being the best that position has to offer, to be able to play this game at 40 years of age and make rosters and be all Pro Bowlers, you know, like, but like when I think about how I see the game of football, I think Peyton Manning unequivocally is the best regular season quarterback I have ever seen play in my entire life. He is absurd, right? Playoffs tell a different story. Level of competition you're going against, I get it. To me, the playoffs really is when the team, like I think good players win games in the regular season. I think good teams win games in the playoffs. It's the way it goes. And you're as good as your team. And those Colts teams were good. So I'm not trying to knock them. I think Joe Montana is the best playoff quarterback I've ever seen in my entire life, evident by his undefeated record in the playoffs, the way that he rolls, right? Like or undefeated in Super Bowls. I think he's got like 2 playoff losses, whatever it is, right? Like, so that's why I can't, there's just not enough body of work for me when you start getting into your top fives to say that like Mahomes is there, dude. Like, dude, you and I, we watched Dan Marino play. We watched John Elway play, right? Like we watched Brett Favre play. We've watched
I'm not a Favre believer.
Quarterbacks play the game.
Do not put Favre's name up with those guys.
Either way, dude, we watched really good quarterbacks play, like while we were growing up. Speaking of while we were growing up, I have a question for you. It's outside of this Chiefs Bengals game. It goes back to my game. Ever, since you've been watching football, can you ever remember a third string quarterback starting the NFC Championship game? And I say this with a caveat because I know most people would look at it and be like, well, Brock Purdy's like QB1 now, right? Like, so he's not your typical third string, but at the start of the season, he was your third string quarterback and he's your starter in the NFC Championship, let alone fourth string quarterback.
Was Nick Foles?
Foles was the backup. Yeah, he was the backup for Wentz. Okay. I mean, we've seen Hostetler go do that back in the day for the Giants. Frank Reich win one of the biggest games ever for Buffalo just in time for Jim Kelly to come back. So we've seen the backup do some things. But have you ever watched I can't even remember a playoff game where I've watched a third string or let alone a fourth string and arguably a fifth string quarterback appear in the game. Never seen anything like that before in my life.
Yeah.
All right. Are we done with the Chiefs Bengals? We said our piece. Oh, you know, one thing I do want to say about the Chiefs Bengals game is now we got to hear about how the NFL is scripted. The NFL is scripted.
I'm all
these players jumping in. And I know, dude, I'm all about conspiracy theories, right? But this is one that I always dismissed, right? And then all of a sudden you watch that game a little bit, and I'm not trying to pour any fuel on this fire, add any validation to it. But you could, if you watch that one game and that one game only, you might be like, maybe it is, right? Like,
so
maybe it is.
It's interesting that you say that because this is what's been trending on Twitter. What Arian Foster was saying. Have you heard about this? What Arian Foster was saying? Yeah. He was saying tongue in cheek, but Arian Foster was saying it in the serious tone and with the serious face. He's like, "Oh yeah, 100%. The NFL scripted." He's like, "We, in the beginning of the season, the off season, we get the scripts of what's going to happen and what have you." Like he was like going, along with it, and the whole trend right now are players that like there's a funny GIF or a funny video, like when so and so sees the script, for for like the 2008 season or what have you, like when Michael Vick sees the script for when he gets arrested for like dog fighting, he's like, oh shit, like type stuff. So that's the thing that's trending. It's not scripted, no. I will say
it can be influenced. If we want to go to one way or the other, like, hey, this is a gambling-led world. It's a gambling-led sport. Like, money can influence.
Why is that so outrageous? This has happened in other sports. This has happened in baseball with Pete Rose, and also the Black Sox scandal. Like the fixing of the games and what have you. This has even happened in NBA with that referee.
Yep.
Right.
It's not far-fetched.
This isn't far-fetched.
The far-fetched is the scripted, right? Like as it goes out.
That'd be pretty sick, though.
You seen that one video where the guy's like 10 different versions of himself and people are throwing out like scripted scenarios and he's like, oh, that's old. Oh, that's good. You know what I mean? Like going back to the season.
And if it is scripted, you got to feel for Philip Rivers, man. You got to feel for him because like, he's like, oh, fuck, I have to have another kid after this season.
They're going to talk about my 9th child. Like, we're running out of stunt doubles to bring in and play these.
Yeah, I'm shooting powder at this point.
But some players and ex-players are having a little bit of fun with it, which is like comedy to me. It gives me a good chuckle. But that being said, man, I get it. Like, I actually feel for the kid from Cincinnati because
he had a good game, man.
He balled out. He's 22, man. Like, he's still developing, like, emotionally.
Yo, I like how I'm liking the Cincinnati team, man.
Yeah,
because they are
so young. They're all under contract, bro.
They're young. They're under contract, but you can tell they are a close knit team. They are confident, and they're dangerous. They are going to be a force to reckon. Everyone put the Bills right up there, like, you know, right next to the threat of the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe we were too quick to anoint the Buffalo Bills. Maybe it's the Cincinnati Bengals that really is the next, you know, heir apparent in the AFC. So I don't know. And you know, good for that franchise because that franchise has been a fucking joke for such a long time. It's fantastic seeing the changing of the guard from a franchise that was never considered serious, that people would go to the games, you know, with bags over the heads, calling themselves the Bungles and everything like that. Yep. And to turn it into this, it's awesome, man.
Yeah, listen.
Get rid of the old blood, out with the old, in with the new.
Yeah, I enjoy watching them. You know, I don't really have a negative thing to say. I know I was a big kind of like poo-pooer on Zach Taylor after his first 2 years there.
Even he's awesome with like when they win the games, he goes to the bar, he gives the football. Like they're just doing it right, man. It's awesome. It's just it's easy to root for.
I know all these guys are humans, right? Like and that's why I've said it many times on this show. I don't ever shit on a player because I'm sitting on my couch watching the game, right? I can't do what they do, even if they're not on the 53, you know, like I just can't. So I might critique and say like, hey, this player is clearly not as good as that other player, or they didn't play a good game or anything along those lines, but I will never question these people's talent. But they're all human beings. I get that, right? But like some of them
don't go soft on me, Weston.
Aren't as like, I think what turned it for me on my feeling of Zach Taylor, outside of like obviously like the winning pedigree that he's brought in and seeing consistency now 2 years in a row from them, was the whole Damar Hamlin situation. The way he walked over to Sean McDermott was like, what do you want to do, man? Like, what do you want to do? And it just, you and I will figure this out. Like, we don't even care what the NFL has to say. Like, we'll make our own decisions. We won't put our team out there. We'll tell them to go fuck off, you know, that sort of thing. And I was like, God, that's a fucking guy that if I played ball, I would rally behind.
That's a leader.
That's a leader of men. That's just a leader of men. Like, no other way to put it down. And that changed it for me. And I think from that moment forward, I'm on this Zach Taylor bandwagon. And oh, by the way, it helps that like you still have 3/4 of your studs sitting on fucking rookie contracts, right? Like, who are still, for all intents and purposes, developing in this league. Now, the issue is going to come real soon. Burrow's going to have to get paid. Chase is going to have to get paid. T. Higgins is going to have to get paid. Mixon just ran into a little legal issue, right?
That's 10 million free. That's 10 million free cap right there.
Yeah, you know, so like there's some things that, like, listen, every team goes through this. We've seen the Kansas City Chiefs survive through this, but like I think a Zach Taylor-led Cincinnati team, so long as Joe Burrow and some combination of Jamar Chase and some other,
they just got to keep those big. They just got to keep those big three: Burrow, Higgins, and Chase together, and also. But they signed Hendrickson. So.
Yeah, and that defense is sneaky good too, man. Like they're sneaky good at all. You know, Logan Wilson, right? Like out of Montana, like nobody saw this guy coming. You got Hubbard and Hendrickson.
I saw him. Yeah.
Jesse Bates back there. Like Amarillo is killing it. You know.
Yeah.
So all right, Lou, off this subject, let's get to one more before we get out of here. I'm going to try to keep us under an hour this evening. I want to loop you back in. Yeah, so far we haven't had, like, the season's still going, right? But there's been a couple coaching changes, obviously. We'll talk more about this in a moment, but, like, D'Amico Ryan's going to the Texans.
Love it.
Sean Payton, yeah, I'd actually prefer him go there. Sean Payton, I'm a little leery because of what history has shown, for minority coaches over the last 2 years out of Houston, but I think he's got a different relationship as a former player there.
Yeah.
A different hype and youth about him coming in. Sean Payton going to the Denver Broncos. I'm going to shit on that in just a minute. Well, you hate it as, like, he's in your division, but I don't think that's the right fit either way. He's
better than the one they had before, though.
He's better than the one they had before. So let's spend a minute. He's better than the one they had before. But, like, if I'm like, is that really the job?
No, well, I mean, what's coming
out? Really, like, if I wait one more year, like, I could have 3 or 4 other preliminary, like, premier franchise that I can have with really good talent. And I'm not saying Denver doesn't have really good talent, but when I think of Sean Payton, you can't help but think of Drew Brees, right? Like, they go together. So you think of strong, solid quarterback play. And I know what Russell Wilson's history suggests because I watched it firsthand for a long time. But I'm also a little bit leery because usually when a quarterback has, like, a down season like Russell Wilson did, there's usually, like, 3 or 4 games throughout the season that serve as a reminder of, like, that guy's good, right? It's just an off year, bad year. Things are going weird. Like, blame the coordinator, blame the coach, blame whoever the hell you want. And that's what Nathaniel Hackett was the scapegoat for this financial disaster. But honestly, Lou, there was nothing I saw from Denver's offense last year when Russell Wilson was on the field that was like, they'll turn the corner. This guy will come back to greener pastures. So I'm a little perplexed as to, like, someone like Sean Payton, bro, does not need the money, does not need the notoriety, right? Like, if you're going to come back in, you're coming back in to build yourself, in my opinion, a Hall of Fame resume if you're coming back to this league. And I think you go do that through the path of least resistance. You're going to go to the toughest fucking division in football.
Is it though? I mean,
it still is, dude. It still is. I know everybody's going to say the NFC East based on, but we've seen this fucking thing ebb and flow every single goddamn year. But I look at Herbert, I look at Mahomes, and I say, okay, there are 2 teams you have to worry about year over year over year, so long as these guys are in the league, because the quarterback is, for intents and purposes, enough to keep those games competitive and tight knit. I just didn't. And then you're hearing from Denver, like, he wasn't even like our, like, you got Benjamin Albright, right? Like, who's got his ear to the ground in Denver being like, Peyton wasn't even their top choice.
It wasn't even their second choice. It wasn't even their second choice.
Well, so why are you even going? To me, you sold out, bro. You took money.
Money. Listen, that's happened before, though.
Unless this guy's got a gambling problem we're unaware of, or a heroin problem, or whatever it might be, like, he ain't need the money that bad, bro.
Benjamin Albright's, I'm a huge fan of Benjamin Albright, and to his defense, he made a good point where Peterson, when he coached the Eagles, wasn't their first choice either.
No.
So, like,
good coaches are good coaches. I get it.
Exactly. It's just this is going to tell you a lot about his legacy. I'm a Sean Payton believer. And this is going to tell you a lot about his legacy because they gave up some draft capital, a little cash strapped, right?
Yep.
Coming up. So he's basically
a team that had no draft capital, by the way, right?
Basically,
like gave that up.
He's kind of in a similar situation he was towards the end of New Orleans. An aging quarterback, good defense, trying to hold it together, glue to make that one final run. So I am a believer in him, in Sean Payton. The only thing that will rest my heart, that will make me feel a little more at ease as a Chargers fan, is a poison pill here. Wherever Sean Payton goes, as does Joe Lombardi. And if Joe Lombardi goes to the Denver Broncos,
be the OC,
I feel a little better. I feel okay, because that is the poison pill right there.
Not only is it the poison pill, it is the perfect segue to the question that I originally we got on this topic about.
Wow, sometimes better to be lucky than good, because
Lombardi out Kellen Moore in. Your thoughts for your LA Chargers with that move?
I'm in a wait and see mode. A part of me is excited, right? And I know you're not a Kellen Moore fan, but let me tell you something. Looking at all 32 NFL teams, there's no denying that the Dallas Cowboys offense and offensive schemes were probably a top 8 offense or offensive schemes. I'm looking at all the teams right now.
Yep.
You got the ones you can argue ahead of them, right? From an offensive standpoint, the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Eagles. That's 5. You want to throw the Vikings in there? Sure. Okay. But that's and the Niners. So you can't deny the fact that the Dallas Cowboys offensive scheme and production is not top 8, and they've done it with lesser talent throughout the years. Being their offensive line still good, but not as dominant as it was prior, right? And they've also lost some talent as well from the skill position. Amari Cooper left. Michael Gallup is not the same Michael Gallup that was pre-injury. And Kellen Moore was still able to produce a top offense. Look at if you want to look at all the statistics, he's top. It says he's like top 4, top 5 in a lot of different metrics, whether it's points, yards per attempt, things of that nature. So that has to make you feel good. All right.
Yeah.
That being said, I do like it. I do like it a lot. And for the mere fact,
and you're allowed to, Lou. You know that, right? It's okay to
like. No, because it's
okay to like.
Yeah, this is why I'm tempering my expectations. Because last offseason, on all the shows, I'm like, this is the first time I have hope. No, I am not falling for the Chargers will win the offseason again and look great on paper. This is why I'm tempering my expectations. I'm in a wait and see mode. What I like about Kellen Moore, all right. Well, first of all, let's talk about what happened, in Big D. It just comes a time sometimes in the coaching staff or even players where a change of scenery is needed and is good for all parties.
Agreed.
I don't think it's going to be good for Dallas because I don't know how many times when a coach takes over play calling duties that usually works out. McCarthy has been down this road before, and I think we know that story. But that being said, same thing happened I'm not comparing him, by the way, so please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But same thing would happen to Andy Reid with the Philadelphia Eagles. Could not get over that hump.
Yep.
The Eagles, they eventually kicked them out.
Yep.
Right? Same scenario. So it comes out that there has been, I'm not going to say bickering between Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy, but there was a differences in philosophy. McCarthy wanted to be more ball controlling, establish the run, and what have you, where Moore wanted to open it up more. Yeah, wow, play on words there. And I think there was a little power struggle there because McCarthy does fancy himself as an offensive, minded football coach. But the change of scenery is good. What I'm excited because I obviously did not watch and go back watch all the Cowboys games. I did watch about like 25 to 30 minutes of like film though, breaking down like Moore's tendencies and what have you. Instantaneously, I'll tell you what I like about Kellen Moore and what he'll bring to the Los Angeles Chargers. The use of motion, all right? Putting players in conflict because of the use of motion. And he does a phenomenal job with that. So I'm a big fan of that. And his ability to stretch the field. If you look at what Dak Prescott, what he has averaged over the last couple of years with Kellen Moore versus what Herbert has with Lombardi, it's night and day. It's over like 2.7 yards more, which is significant when you're breaking it down. So he does believe in stretching the field more. And another thing, you got also looking from the Justin Herbert standpoint. Kellen Moore is coming to a quarterback. Dak's a great quarterback, all right? I will not doubt that. But he has his flaws. So he's come into a better situation, Kellen Moore, with a better quarterback. Now, what makes Herbert better than Dak Prescott? Physically, he's better, meaning he has a bigger arm, right? Can get in those tight windows, can stretch the ball effortlessly, unlike Dak, right? His pocket awareness is phenomenal, right? That is also a fantastic something that Dak does not really illustrate, in my personal opinion. And his turnover rate is significantly lower than Dak. Dak has put this team, the Cowboys, in jeopardy to win games because of turnovers and bonehead plays, where Herbert's ability to not turn the ball over and be more conservative and be happy for a check down, I think will keep the drives alive and sustain the drives. And hopefully he changes the run game too. So those are all my thought process. He's going to be able to do more with Herbert than he did with Dak.
Yeah. So quick caveat here, because you said this earlier. I am not the biggest Kellen Moore fan, but I'm not the biggest Kellen Moore fan in the sense of like last year he was a hot candidate for head coaching jobs.
I didn't see. I'm with you. I
look at him and I just see nothing that says head coach to me.
I thought it was too premature. This talks.
So I'm not there yet. From an OC to an OC, so a lateral change, just in a new environment, etc. I think there's a lot to like. I mean, you guys, dude, you see it all firsthand. Your entire year was spent shitting on Joe Lombardi, even though everybody was happy that it was like the first time ever in however long that Herbert was going into consecutive years in the same scheme, etc. I do think Kellen Moore's scheme is not super sophisticated in the sense of like it shouldn't be a setback to the quarterback where it like takes 2 years to get acclimated to this. You mentioned a lot of what he does utilizing more pre-snap motion and movement for our diehard fans out there. That's beneficial for 2 reasons, right? You can create mismatches. First of all, you can literally pick your alignment. And the second, for Herbert, who is a very cerebral player, you're giving him more opportunity to have pre-snap reads into what the defense is going to do.
Also, there's you causing conflict on the defense because there's miscommunication. Who get when someone's in motion, who's picking up who's the responsibility of the guy in motion now, and those are all imperative things. I never felt like the Chargers would use motion, but not effectively because then they all just ran sticks.
Yeah,
which is you just go to the first down marker and turn around. So that's counterproductive then.
The initial and original intention of pre-snap motion was to put the defense in conflict. And I won't go into my Bill Walsh history lesson here, who was the first coach to put somebody in motion and it was done by accident and then became a regular thing once he saw the defense panic and move. And he was like, oh, I think I'll utilize this regularly because nobody did it. And that's part of the evolution of the West Coast offense. So I'm going to give flowers where they're due. And I'm going to give this to the friend of the show, Mr. Craig Smith. Had a post the other day about how he was going back and watching some Dallas Cowboy tape, right? Starting with like Dak in week 1, a couple with Cooper Rush. So I was like, you know what? I'll do the same. I have these subscriptions. Let me just go back a little bit. And I just kind of fly through and I was like, God damn, this offense looks potent. You know what I mean? Even with Cooper Rush. Yeah. 3 wide, a lot of what like I think Lombardi intended to do. I just think Moore has a different schematic behind it and a different, way, just different route concepts and different route tree, right? Not like just 10-yard sticks, right? Like a little bit more creativity to it. So I am on board with in my opinion, on paper, this is an improvement for their offense. And let's not forget that Kellen Moore played the position, right? So he definitely is into his QBs. Like he played the position at a pretty high level. Like he was a quarterback in the NFL and was a very well-known collegiate star. So he gets it, right? Like the psyche of these individuals. So I think he's going to love having access to Justin Herbert. The knock that we all have on him, right? And you just talked about what put him at odds and conflict with Mike McCarthy was less reliancy upon the run game. And I get it. Like, I mean, Zeke's a shell of himself, right? Carrying that piano on his back, but Pollard's super explosive. I think what gives me hesitancy there is because we beat this drum all season long, Lou, about the Chargers just not being able to run the ball. You know what I mean? And like, I do think you actually have capable running backs in your stable. I do. I'm a believer in Spiller. We all believe in Eckler. You know, whether it's Jackson or Kelly, if they're both there, like these guys aren't like scrubs. You know what I mean? I just think they were, when they were running the ball, it was just so obvious, right? Like the defense wasn't fooled. They're, you know what it, like it they just felt like prepared and aligned for it. And we always talk about it, man. Like the threat of running the football has to be there. I'm not saying Kellen Moore doesn't run the ball. Like obviously they do. But I think if he wants to protect his superstar quarterback that he's about to inherit, which is absolutely what Justin Herbert is a superstar, he's going to have to be in the lab a little bit, devising a little bit more about that around that run game. Even if it's you know, you bring in a couple fresh, you know, bodies for camp and for the season through the draft or free agency, whatever it is, have to have a little bit more threat running the football. Otherwise, defenses are going to do what they do, and then Justin Herbert's going to get the same rap he always gets of like, can't win the game. Well, like, dude, yeah, can't win the game by yourself. That's why 11 people suit up on both sides of the fucking football, right? That's why coaching matters in this sport. But in terms of Joe Lombardi out, Kellen Moore in my opinion, big win for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Two things, and then we can end this show if you want.
Yeah.
A mediocre Kellen Moore is light years ahead of a good Joe Lombardi.
Yeah.
So that is going to be a huge emphasis, right? I just want you to hear what I just said. That's a huge emphasis on Kellen Moore. Doesn't have to be a superstar, because even if he's mediocre, he's still going to be so much better than Joe Lombardi. And you know, I wanted Staley gone after this year. I felt like, how do you bring someone back after something like this? Maybe the successor, the head coach, is on the team already now.
I'm literally taking the words right out of my mouth, dude.
Think about it. You, first of all, Herbert and Kellen Moore do have a relationship prior to, I think prior to this, this pairing up. I believe they share the same agency, right? They also have done ads together for they've done commercials together, right? So they have a relationship. So what's the best thing you can do for your quarterback and make him feel comfortable, at ease? If Staley botches it again, you promote Kellen Moore.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I honestly could not have said that better. I think so. I know every year there's like a new superstar candidate that rises to the top, and every year there's going to be
this year was like Zach Robinson, who I would have been happy with too. Zach Robinson, who's the quarterback's coach from the Los Angeles Rams. I thought it was going to be him prior to Kellen Moore, but yeah, he's that next guy. Well, and also Brian Robinson, I think, from the Eagles too.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of like who makes the jump to head coach, right? And you usually see that from a coordinator, right? Not a QB. Like Mike McDaniel's an anomaly, right? Like who didn't necessarily I know he carried the title of OC, but we know who the OC is in San Francisco. That being said, I don't know who the premier candidates are going to be heading into the 2024 season based on 2023 performance. But I do know that the Chargers were probably hoping that Sean Payton might have held out here, right? Give Staley another year, that sort of thing. So the darling candidates have not revealed themselves. And I just talked about it being early for Kellen Moore. But if he comes in and this offense is humming, and the defense is an issue or whatever it is, outside of winning a playoff game this year, this is Staley's last year, in my opinion. He's got to win they got to win a playoff game, or else it's a wrap, And then to your point, does the successor, is he already there? Does he already know people in-house? And, dude, you had crazy things happen, man. You had 49er fans talking halfway through the season, fire Kyle and just promote D'Amico, right? Like people say crazy things when you got good talent in-house, especially from a coaching standpoint. So big win. I find it to be a vast improvement. I just wanted to clarify my point that I'm not a big Kellen Moore guy because the hype last year, I mean, dude, he was like a hyped candidate for head coaching jobs last year and stayed put because I think the teams that probably showed the most interest in him, he was probably looking at it like, I don't really necessarily like your quarterback scenario or your offensive scenario. For him, this is like a dream scenario.
Two things real quick. What's going to separate him from Lombardi is his ability to adjust. Dak goes out week 1. He adjusts the offensive scheme to Cooper Rush. Also, if you look at like their second half scoring, they were one of the top teams in second half scoring, meaning they went into halftime, made adjustments, and were able to continue, putting up points. Something the Chargers had tremendous issues doing in the second half, especially in the third quarter.
What were the 2 knocks this year? If you go back and you want to keep the receipts, digital receipts I always talked about, second half performance, running the football, right? Can we cure those woes? And we're talking about a totally different team. And curing those woes also cures a lot of other woes, right? Like less reliancy on the defense. Like that's why running the ball is important. Time of possession, things of that nature.
Play action.
Bully ball in some scenarios, right? Like just impose your will. And I'm not saying he needs to go play bully ball, right? Like, but the threat needs to be there in some capacity. Neither here nor there. All right. So I said an hour. We're an hour 6. This might be the shortest. This might be the shortest show of the 2022-2023 NFL season for us. Lou, that being said, quickly remind everybody where they can find us before that lung vacates your chest as you're coughing through it. And then I'll sneak preview next week.
All right. You all can find us at WTF Pod NFL on Instagram and Twitter. And then go ahead, Weston, tell them about next week.
YouTube, We're Talking Football. TikTok, We're Talking Football. Videos will be out there. The page has been created, almost finalized, with some help of the youthful generation helping old dogs like us out. That being said, Lou, like we started the show, next week we'll forward look at the Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll also recap a little bit of the collegiate games this weekend in terms of the East-West Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl. I think we'll come back. Maybe we'll each pick a handful of prospects that maybe stood out from us from the weeks of practice in the Senior Bowl, which we get exposure to. You don't get much in the East-West game. And then ultimately what we saw from the games this weekend, which begin tomorrow night, and then Saturday night. And then we'll roll from there and we'll prioritize off-season content. So that wraps us up, man. We're a week and a half away from finalizing this season. Then we get into the doldrums of the NFL, which is the off-season and OTAs.
That's my favorite part before anyone gets hurt.
Workout warriors. We talk about everybody looks – I remember my high school coach telling me back in the day, man, like everybody looks good in shorts, bro. Like,
clearly your coach never saw me.
He wasn't looking at me with my bird ass legs and shorts too. So, all right, brother. Appreciate you, man. Till this time next week. That's all she wrote.